And we're back for the final season of Game of Thrones. Season 8, the first episode is called Winterfell. Just a quick update that we're trying to get this podcast on iTunes. We submitted it last week, but it has not been accepted yet. So this first episode will go on YouTube, and then of course we'll put it on iTunes as soon as we're accepted. Hopefully by episode 2, you can find us on iTunes. And if you subscribe, it's not going to be just this last season. We will eventually podcast about the Game of Thrones new show that'll come out in a year or two or whatever. Anyways, welcome back.
Hi.
Hi. All right. Well, I took an unusually large amount of notes for an episode that didn't have a tremendous amount of violence or anything, but I thought it was a good start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely liked it. It was slow. It was a complete setup episode.
Yeah, I thought they were going to start right out of the gate with a bunch of stuff happening because there's only 6 episodes this season. And since it was such a setup episode, it made me feel like, come on, we only got 6 episodes. And it was a short one on top of that.
Right.
But the new introduction, it started with that. And I'm going to have to watch it again. I was like disoriented watching it. Yeah. And I was trying to focus on every little thing. And it was cool. It looked cool. It's nice to already be thrown off guard, and like focusing from the beginning. And as I watch it again, if I find anything to comment on, I will.
I mean, I did think it was kind of cool how they were showing the cold coming in as...
following as the chessboard type thing is being laid out. Yeah. And then it went inside the castles, got into the crypts and everything.
Which I thought was pretty neat, because there's a lot of those crypts that I feel like significant stuff was going to happen there, and this episode did not disappoint on that front.
Right, exactly. I wonder, just looking at this intro, how much you could parse out of what's going to happen if you really put your mind to it. Well, it was an interesting way that they started it, and I liked it quite a bit. It was essentially the same opening as Season 1, Episode 1. From the music, which I don't know if we've heard since Season 1. That was kind of King Robert's theme song. The music was the same. It starts with this kid. It's kind of from his point of view, which could have been Arya. In the post-show, they said it was like when Arya was a little kid, but it reminded me more of Bran.
Well, it was also what Bran did in the first season.
So it's like in the beginning of Season 1, Bran is running up on the top of the battlements of the castle to see the arriving king and royalty and everything, and that's what happens in this episode.
I think it's like called circular storytelling or something, but they're coming back to where things started. Right, yeah, going full circle, essentially. And the Unsullied are arriving at Winterfell. They got warmer gear.
Yeah, they're going to need it.
Their arms aren't exposed anymore.
Arya is in the crowd, and when she sees Jon, she can hardly contain herself. She wants to go over there. And
when we were watching, you said, it's Arya's greatest hits.
Yeah, Arya's greatest hits, because right after she sees Jon, she sees the Hound and Gendry. She has history with all these people.
Yeah, and we see her connect with them all in this episode, which that's what I like best about this episode is the reunions, because it hasn't been since the very beginning of Season 1 where some of these people have seen each other. And so I very much liked that, with especially the Starks, but like even some other characters. And then just, it's weird, like sometimes I think I need a little bit more time to fully process it, but I felt like it was a little slow, and it could have been put together differently.
Well, so it went for a long time without anything being said, which I personally kind of liked. So everything's walking in, and then we see the Northerners. They're apparently have never seen dark-skinned people before. They're looking at Grey Worm and Missandei like, what is this? And
I think they're just seeing everybody as foreigners. The North is not used to other people. And basically anyone who's not the North is almost a foreigner, I think, to these people. And there's so many different people, from the Unsullied to the Dothraki. And, the North doesn't like that. They need time to warm up. And they're not getting that at all here. We as an audience understand what's so at stake here, but they've just been going through a lot here in these last few years, and I think they're kind of tired of people coming in and taking over. Yeah,
I mean, they definitely look wary, and I don't blame them. So we get a long time without a line, and then we finally get some words spoken, and it's... I thought this episode did an okay job balancing some humorous parts, but the opening lines of Tyrion giving Varys a hard time about being a eunuch, I don't know.
There were a couple lines where I'm just like, that was dumb. Another one is, what do dragons eat? Whatever they want. It was too corny in some ways, or
there's some funny,
juvenile.
Yeah. They did have some funny parts, but I felt like this last season too, and maybe there'll be something big that happens for Tyrion, but I feel like they kind of just don't know what to do with him now. So they're just giving him lines, and he's brokering some deals, I guess. But
no, I don't really understand the point of his character, really, at this point. He's not doing anything really much of consequence. It was cool to see him and Sansa meet up again.
Yeah.
Because there's mutual respect. We'll get to that in a
I got all the reunions there in a second.
And just to clarify, I hold Game of Thrones on a level that no other show can touch. So when I say what could come off as negative things here, the show, it really is still quite an amazing one, and I'm thoroughly entertained. Even in the quote-unquote bad episodes, they're still good.
Yeah, I saw Rotten Tomatoes recently. They put out a thing with all the episodes and their tomato score, and the lowest one is still like in the high 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, a bad episode of Game of Thrones gets like a 93% score or something.
Right. And so that's where a lot of my criticism comes
that's where
from.
Context comes in, is we just have such high expectations of such a good show.
But when you know it's capable of being so good, I hold it to that standard. So that's where some of my criticisms come in, when I know that they didn't quite meet expectations.
To me, the episode actually, I liked it better than I thought I was going to. My only criticism is what I already mentioned, is that knowing that there's only 6 episodes, it gives it an extra kind of pressure. But all right, so all the pomp and circumstance happens with the armies showing up and everything like that, and then we get some of the reunions. And one of the first ones we get is Jon and Bran, who haven't seen each other since like the beginning of season 1 or something like that.
And he's shocked to see him.
Yeah, and Bran looks completely different. He was a tiny little boy when Jon left.
This is like a weird piece, though, for me that I commented to you as we were watching it, because throughout the entire episode, Bran is often just sitting in like the Winterfell city center, just sitting and hanging out, and he has this ability. Like, I think a lot of people are probably, they don't know what to make of him, and like it's just kind of creepy.
Yeah, he does come off as
it's not like he's hanging by the weirwood tree or something. He's just there sitting.
Yeah.
He knows everything. Like, that's going to make people not feel at ease.
Well, he's at a point where he doesn't really care how people feel.
Yeah, he doesn't.
But I thought in their reunion there was a double entendre. Is that how you say it?
Well, I have to know what you're saying first.
When it has 2 meanings. So, Jon says, "You're a man," and Bran says, "Almost a man." And I think at first glance you could take that as he's almost grown up, but you could also take it as he's...
I took it as he's not really human
anymore. not quite human, right?
Yeah.
Almost a man, half human, half three-eyed raven, whatever. So that's what I meant by double entendre.
Oh,
is that correct usage?
Yeah.
Because we get another one later that I will point out when we get there. But... And then, so they're kind of meeting. Hello, Sansa. Hello, Dany. And then Bran says, he gives them an update that they broke through the wall. They're coming. We don't even have time for pleasantries.
Yeah.
So that's wet blanket thrown over them. And then we fall into the old familiar pattern where Jon is trying to explain to the Northerners who just elected him king that he gave up his crown. And, Sansa has a problem with this, and so does the little girl, Mormont. And I don't blame them having a problem for this, but it's still... People just can't wrap their mind around the real problem. To them, it's still politics. It's still bickering over this and that. And there was a point Tyrion made in the previous season that our minds aren't created for these existential threats that are this big,
But I think it highlights also an important piece here, because we hear for years Dany being like, I am the rightful queen, I am the rightful blah, 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 blah. And we now, especially last season and again here in this episode, Jon is saying over and over again, I didn't want to be king. I didn't want this. And it's such a different narrative between these two people of their approach to it. And like, I remember thinking with last season of like, who cares if he bends the knee right now? Like, once she figures out what's going on of the whites and the White Walkers and all that, why is it so important that he has to give up his kingdom of the North here just to appease her? Like, she's so singularly focused on being the ruler of the 7 kingdoms. And I think it's the show kind of saying what I think they much more clearly stated in this episode of like, Dany may not be that good of a leader.
Well, I'm not going to say I was right. We still got 5 episodes left, but...
Well, I feel like they started painting a very different picture here with this episode. Like, if there was some, like, I think there's some setup before, now it's like, nope, there's definitely setup.
Yeah, and when I have a lot to say about that later in the episode, so I'll stop there for a second and we'll just go. The only other note I have at this portion of Winterfell, we'll come back to Winterfell later, is Sansa and Tyrion meeting, like you said, and... these two kind of respect each other. Tyrion was kind to her when they were married. He didn't force himself upon her on their wedding night.
But he doesn't seem very useful anymore, because I think Sansa is completely right. She seems to be telling everybody all the time, don't underestimate Cersei. She did it last season with Littlefinger. Like, she's just, it's funny to me that she seems to be the only one, and Tyrion should know, like, almost better than anyone else than Sansa. And he's all like,
No, it's extremely bizarre that Tyrion
So when she
is
said,
so
I used to think you're the
naive.
cleverest man, yeah, he's incredibly naive.
Unless maybe he knows something we don't know that's coming later. But
yeah.
Right, they like switch places. Now she's the cynic and he's the naive person. But she called him out on it. I thought that they were just going to end the conversation, but she called him out, which means that she drew attention to it to us.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm sure most people noticed it before, but if not, it's so. I don't know exactly what to make of Tyrion's recent embrace of
and I think
non-intelligence.
It's what you were kind of saying. Like it's like they don't know what to do with him because. At least he used to be, witty and clever and had some, fun relationships like him and Bronn or him and Pod or something like that. But, like, I don't know. He's just not very interesting right now. And maybe we only have 5 left, but maybe a lot will happen with that. But there's a lot of setup here for Sansa and her ability to rule and be clever. And like, she kind of is almost ruling the roost here.
Yeah, she's clearly taking command when Jon was gone and is doesn't seem to be doing a poor job of it.
Yeah. Well, and Arya utterly respects her.
Yes, that was an interesting thing too, and that came with Jon and Arya's meeting. But yeah, they're 2 peas in a pod at this point.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to King's Landing for a second. Cersei gets the news that the White Walkers have broken through the wall, and she seems pleased by this news.
Yeah.
Which maybe she knows something we don't know, or maybe she's just really dumb. But
I honestly think she's just wanting the 2 sides to pick each other off as much as they can, and then she'll come in and take care of whoever is left.
Right. I mean, obviously, Winterfell is much further north than King's Landing, so in theory, the White Walkers will destroy everyone in Winterfell for her. But it still seems an awfully dangerous thing to be happy about.
Yeah, she's similar to Littlefinger in that she'd be happy to be queen of the Ashes as long as she's queen and she survives.
My second double entendre was when Euron Greyjoy says he wants to fuck the queen, and I didn't know if he meant physically or he's going to fuck her over. So, didn't take him long to accomplish the first.
And he insinuates the possibility of the second meeting. He'll take the Iron Fleet elsewhere if...
Oh, yeah. He says that if they're losing...
Side, yeah.
Right, yeah. Yara says you pick the losing side, and he's like, I'll just dip out then.
Yeah.
But I like that Cersei is turned on by this guy who is...
Well, she hates her brothers now.
Well, and also she says, you're the most arrogant man I ever met. I assume the previous most arrogant man she ever met was Jaime. Who has now been humbled.
Yeah, Jaime's not the same anymore. That's Jaime before he lost his hand. That's Jaime before he lost his kids, his dad, and before he lost Cersei the way he knew her. And she's basically written him off because now she's sending Bronn to go kill him.
Yeah, and I don't know what to think about that. I assume that Bronn is not going to turn into a villain
because he's friends with both of them.
This season, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also shown that he's a cutthroat. He's always been interested in financial gain, but it's like, I don't know. Are they going to turn Bronn into like a
why did he
quote-unquote
stay
bad
back?
guy?
I don't fully understand.
I think Jaime just left without telling anyone, and
Okay.
Bronn just went on with his life as normal.
Yeah, okay.
That'll be interesting to see. I don't foresee Bronn becoming the villain this season. Bronn's like a big fan favorite.
Yeah. And
in the books, he has a much more minor role
Yeah.
so far. So
I just don't even see it as plausible that he would actually go kill the brothers.
Yeah. Well.
The scene with Euron and Cersei where he says that he wants to impregnate her, I was trying to interpret her reaction of, is she considering having kids again or is she too far gone? Like, part of me wants to interpret of like, yeah, no, little do you know that I will make sure that I never have one of your kids the way she did with Robert's. Or it almost like sparks this desire within her again. She's turned a new page. She's gotten rid of Jaime. She needs a
I took it as the second part. I think she likes him. Being a mother has always been important to her.
Yeah.
I think she feels excited for the first time in a long time by this arrogant man.
And the dynasty for 1,000 years.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, if there's going to be any more Lannisters, it's going to come down to her because Jaime, who knows what... Well, I guess
it's funny. I don't know why I always say dynasty instead of dynasty, but that's the way Tywin Lannister always says it, and I feel like I have to say it the way that he does.
And I should just take back everything I said because Tyrion and Jaime can still have kids, so it's irrelevant what I said. And then we meet this Golden Company captain, Captain Strickland. We don't know anything about him yet, but Cersei seems to be disappointed in what she's getting, but I assume that they're...
Because she wanted her damn elephants.
Yeah. I think she thought she was getting much more powerful than what she got, but it's still going to be a formidable part of the show, I assume. With only 5 episodes left after this one, how many new characters can they give us? This is probably the last main new character. I assume he's going to be main, but I don't know.
Well, and it also sets up, like, take out the Whites and the White Walker situation. Cersei still is a force to be reckoned with. It's not an easy one-sided thing. They've got we know that dragons can be pierced if you shoot them just right. They have the thing that Qyburn built, and which they've already used, but so they have that, and then they also have huge armies with the Iron Fleet and now with the Golden Company that they can actually pay.
Right, yeah. It's hard. It's easy to make the mistake that you said earlier of us underestimating Cersei because we got dragons and everything over here,
right.
But
while we're in this geographical area, Theon redeems himself by rescuing Yara and was pretty good. He was like Arya level assassin, which I'm not quite sure
yeah.
A man who's missing some toes and fingers can do that, but
apparently the Greyjoy, this little group is as good as Ramsay's 10 good men that took out Stannis.
Right.
They're little when they need the convenience of having super assassins, they'll take it.
Yeah, and so Yara gets rescued, so now that plot point is changing. I did like their scene where he says, "You're my queen, I'll follow you wherever you go." Yara's already trying to plan how to support the North and Dany and just if things like a contingency plan.
Or at least she presents it that way, which she probably is.
Yeah.
It's probably legit.
But she's already at least thinking. But she also knows her brother really well. So one of the things that Theon had said to Ramsay was that his real family was the Starks. And by the time he figured it out, everything was kind of quote-unquote too late. Well, he knows now, but what's he supposed to do? And so Yara, I think, knows this and basically gives, he wants to go fight for the Starks. He wants to go fight for his house. All his remaining family members from that house are all there now doing this, and he wants to be with them.
And she gives him the out.
Yeah.
I have in my notes, it says, Theon finally makes a right choice. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, he did when he saved Sansa and such, but he was so broken when they parted, and he always will have elements here that are broken for him, but he's going to come back and actually be a worthy fighter and be able to fight alongside them.
We are doing this is for the general crowd, we're doing a rewatch of the previous seasons that we'll put out some point after this in the future. And one thing I had said in a previous episode of a rewatch is I was thinking about what would be the safe places in Westeros if the White Walkers actually start taking over. And I listed the Eyrie as a relatively safe place and Dragonstone because it's an island. I can't believe I didn't think of Pike.
Yeah, it's literally a bunch of islands.
Yeah, she points out Pike because the White Walkers don't seem to be able to cross water.
Yeah.
Because as we know, when Stannis defeated Mance Rayder, he got north of the wall by just sailing around it.
It's not a permanent solution because if you've got the whites all over in Westeros, people need to be fed. They would have to leave for Essos at some point.
Well, yeah. No, Pike is, apparently Euron can just say, I need 1,000 ships, and they can just build it. So apparently Pike has a lot of natural resources, more than maybe Dragonstone. But anyways, whatever. Yeah. So I didn't think of Pike as a safe haven, and I doubt they'll go there, but Yara is thinking strategically. All right, let's jump back up north to Winterfell again, because they went back there, and Davos proposes that there should be a proposal between Jon and Dany. They should get married. He brings this to Tyrion and Varys, so kind of discussing it, because they see the young love, and Jon rides a dragon.
Yeah, we have our 3 dragon riders now.
Yes, oh my goodness. So, if you haven't read the books allude to there being 3 dragon riders more heavily, and there's a lot of speculation about who they were. And if you figured out who Jon's parents are, which if somebody forgot, they made it crystal clear in this episode. But everyone knew Dany and Jon and who was going to be the 3rd rider. Never occurred to me it would be a White Walker. So that's...
Which, I don't know if this is in line with it at all, but
right, the books might go a different route.
Right, but in theory, if you have to be a Targaryen in order to ride a dragon, it could imply that White Walker...
The Night King is a Targaryen?
The Night King is got some Targaryen blood in him.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. To ride a zombie dragon, do the rules still apply?
Right, right.
So riding that dragon looked completely terrifying to me.
How would you not just slip off?
Right. At least Dany presumably had some practice with little ones. But in the books, at least in the World Book where you get a lot of art, they actually have saddles on dragons. which makes a lot of sense to me because when they were diving around and John's holding on.
I don't know why they didn't add saddles. I just don't understand how he did not, especially like when they were doing all that, like the acrobatic flying, like he would just slip right off.
Well, just imagine that he has a telepathic connection like an avatar because he's a Targaryen. Yeah. So we can just explain it.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, that works. Because this is high fantasy. But all in all, I mean, that was an okay scene, and he learned how to steer the dragon.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him being on the dragon. I liked that part of it. There was some elements of like, is just are they being cutesy and are they on like a date?
Well, yeah, I kept thinking of the Avatar scene where he first rides the dragon. Yeah, they're on a date, and he steers the dragon, and he steers it to this beautiful place with a waterfall, and they're building this romance for sure.
That didn't totally work for me. Again, I'm separating the part of him getting on the dragon in that piece. It was just something to it.
Thinking they got bigger fish to fry than
this. Yeah. This is kind of where, again, when Bran said already in the episode, we don't have time for this, and they're just gallivanting around, and it was funny to me because I guess he took her to a place where he used to hunt or something, but it looked like the waterfall, like there was a cave there or something, and she's like, we could stay here for 1,000 years.
It was just
and I was like, is this egret all over again? And I don't know, maybe that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because I feel that his love for Egret was so much more authentic than what he feels for Dany.
There was definitely some parallels there, and
and Egret was not his sister?
Well, he finds this out 15 minutes later.
Wait. No, I said that wrong.
Cousin.
Aunt.
Yeah, aunt, not cousin. Yeah.
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 No.
So, all right, before we get to all that.
Well, one last thing here. So we own pets. We have cats. And there's a lot of other people like out there. Well, yeah. Well, like a lot of other, dogs are like this too. But what's with it when owners are trying to have some grown-up time and the pets have to be all there staring at you?
So I thought that was a pretty well injected piece of humor.
I did like that piece.
Yeah. So is it jealousy?
No. I think it's just, hey, dude, what's up? I'm here. Just carry on like I'm not.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of just trying to set the stage that they're comfortable with Jon, and then it's just a matter of him being comfortable with them. But they're already kind of saying, like, you're cool with us.
Yeah. And then back in Winterfell, we just get some reunions between Arya and some of her greatest hits.
Yeah.
First the Hound.
Which that one did not disappoint for me, her and the Hound.
Yeah, I mean...
He's still the Hound. Even in how he's been refined and how she's way colder than how they knew each other last.
No, but I don't think anybody could see that scene and be afraid that something was going to happen.
No,
yeah, it was obvious.
No, but also, like, I didn't want them to make it too cheesy.
Right.
Because she's Arya and he's the Hound, and it went exactly as it should.
And then she meets Gendry.
Which, okay, so she was so happy when she saw him during the procession, and then she sees him again. I have been saying this for a while. If anyone ever decides to listen to our rewatch, I have a huge hope for Arya and Gendry hooking up and becoming a pair.
I think you might be right.
I feel like there was some setup here.
I have been predicting Gendry and Sansa, but that doesn't appear anywhere.
No.
My only reason, because he's the last Baratheon, she's a Stark, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, she seemed right at the end there to kind of, her being Arya, flirt with Gendry a little bit.
If Arya's going to flirt, that's what that was.
And yes,
sharing
to the best of her ability.
With him
right. And then he said that she looked good or whatever he said. So yeah, there was
But I love that idea of the two of them together, and I've loved it ever since they first met.
And then we get a powerful scene.
Yeah.
Where Dany and Jorah go to thank Sam, and
it did not go the way they thought it would.
Did not go. I'm surprised Jorah didn't know this. He just must not have known Sam's last name, because he certainly knows who the Tarly family is.
So this was a piece where I don't think this was done as well as it could have been. I get, like, all what they were trying to do is get it so Sam and Dany were meeting and he gets this information. They used how Sam saved Jorah. But it felt clunky to me because then Jorah was just like window dressing, just hanging out there during this incredibly awkward scene. And it just seemed kind of funny of him not somehow playing a bigger role because of his loyalty to Dany and how much he loves her. But also, here's the guy who risked his own neck, who saved his life.
I almost thought at the end when Sam walked out after getting news that Dany had burned his father and brother, I almost thought Jorah would say, I didn't know he was a Tarly. Just some little thing like that to kind of give us a little more clarification or get Jorah to say something. He was just standing there. But ultimately, the point of the scene was that Sam finds out that his family was killed. And we know him and his father did not get along, but it can still be emotional news.
He cared about his brother.
He cared about his brother. And
his brother wasn't a horrible person.
No, Dickon was a good man. And the acting with Sam was just top notch.
Yeah, the actor who plays Sam is amazing, and did such a great job with this scene because there were some nuances as he's getting this information and just his compassion. He's such a likable character consistently. He
took it harder than I would have expected. But, of course, it was his brother. And also just the fact that she straight up says he wouldn't bend the knee. Like, it's not like it was in the battle.
Yeah.
This was an execution to the last two people who were standing up to her. And the brother chose. I said this the first time we watched it. If anybody listened to our season 6 or 7, whenever that happened, recap, I said, like, this is kind of a big deal. And this is a violent thing that she's doing.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Well, now the chickens are coming home to roost.
Right, yeah.
Because even though we know certain things about Sam's history and especially the relationship with his father and what his father did to get Sam to join the Night's Watch, what didn't quite work for me with some of this is like, are we supposed to be horribly sad about this? I feel bad for Sam, but it wasn't as obvious, and so it felt a little bit like, oh, okay.
Well, that's kind of what I've been thinking for a long time, is that as we rewatch the first 5 seasons, everything about Dany is so, once she starts getting power, is so powerful and majestic, and she's always freeing the slaves, and her heart's always in the right place, that it's easy to forget all the terrible things that she's doing, and all the just mean, self-righteous things that she's doing as we watch it. I think it's sometimes only upon a rewatch that you're like, Jesus, she's like doing really mean things.
Well, and I mean, I think self-righteous is pretty spot on. She's really like into herself.
Yeah.
And I find it very off-putting. So even in this episode, how she comes in like, yeah, everyone should just adore me. I am your queen. And it's like, yeah, no, this wasn't going to go really well. You can't just come in and expect people to just be like, all right, the way that, her slaves from Slaver's Bay or the Dothraki, because the Dothraki respect power. I get that. She freed the slaves. I get that. But you can't come to Westeros being like, I'm the ruler. You should all love me. Like, and she acts very haughty and entitled with certain things. Like, she's all pissed off that Sansa's giving her a hard time, and they don't know you.
And I will say that it's a really good thing they've done in the show of transforming her character. From, if you go back to season 1, she's this helpless child, to now she's this...
But so is Sansa.
I'm the shit person. But yeah, I agree. So, alright. And then Sam, upon hearing this news, immediately has to go and tell Jon who he is, because Bran tells him it's the right time. And, so
I was waiting for that this whole episode. When are they going to tell Jon? Because now finally the people who know the truth are with Jon, and I thought Bran would have told him like immediately. I'm glad we didn't have to wait longer than this episode to see Jon find out. I feel like there's a couple huge like takeaways from this episode, and this is probably the biggest.
Right, and they really, really told us what's going on, and it's very interesting, the ramifications of what this means, for reasons we've discussed in previous podcasts. But should Jon choose to tell Dany, and he may not, he doesn't want this, he doesn't care about this, but should Jon choose to tell Dany, if she cares about the things she claims to care about, has to take a back seat.
Right, well, and I think that's Sam's arguments to Jon, and I think it's the show creators' arguments to us. Because I think there are a lot of Dany fans out there who are going to be like, well, no, we like Dany better. And I think what they're trying to show here, when Sam asks these questions of, will she step aside? Immediately, I answered in my head, I was like, nope. No, she won't.
What does that mean, right?
She loves power, I think, too much. She's not as ruthless as Cersei is, but she is ruthless as we're talking here, and Sam recognized that as a problem.
I don't know what direction they're going to take it, because I've been thinking there's only 6, now 5 episodes left. How much can they really build a story to where she becomes a villain, which maybe she will, maybe she won't, but is there even time to build that storyline? But there's an obvious conflict right here, and it's the worst possible time. So I assume Bran must have a reason for spilling the beans at this point. And it can't just be, well, they might die tomorrow. I guess it could be that, but it seems like this might create a civil war in Winterfell.
Well, and he happened to be in the crypts, which I think is one of the safest places to be told such a huge secret like that.
And he was looking at a statue of Ned.
In the essence of like his father, but also Lyanna's there. So his mother is there, and the man he believed his father to be is there. So it's so poetic in that way. I think Bran was very purposeful of why Jon was told right there. You said that Jon may not care; he doesn't want any of this. I think if he suspects that Dany isn't as good of a ruler as he currently believes, he'll care a lot. Well, he never wants power, but he will do it if it's for the betterment of the situation. So he did it become Lord Commander. He's done it become the King of the North. I think he'll become King of the Seven Kingdoms if it means protecting them from something.
And it's just going to be so weird to us viewers who have always seen Dany as the person who is going to be jiving for this. Like
I just never really thought that she would end up there. All along, I was like, I think she was going to go over there and something would happen, but like, I don't see her being the one that sits on the Iron Throne at the end, if there is even an Iron Throne to sit on.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if everything gets disbanded and they go back to Westeros pre-Targaryen, which actually isn't that long ago. It's like 300 years.
Well, it's hard to say because Westeros seems a little bit modeled after England, so I don't know how much we could try to draw from history. But yeah, I won't be surprised if there's not a Iron Throne at the end of this story.
Something of note that this episode gave us, and we already talked about Jon riding the dragon and how he's part Targaryen, blah, blah, blah. But what's a really important takeaway from that is the fact that one of the things that made Dany so special, her superpower, was the fact that she can as much as you quote unquote control these dragons, and she can ride them and she can wield them as weapons, and no one else could. And now we've got Jon, who's got this superpower too, and they will defer to him. That's what part of that scene was saying, is they're cool with him. He can ride them. He can, he basically can do what Dany can do. He's not as accomplished yet, but he can.
Yeah, it won't take him long, right?
Yeah,
there's some competition in
the
field.
We don't need Dany, though, as an audience in order for these dragons to be controlled. But I also think that there's been huge setup of that. They are wild creatures, and they aren't meant to be in captivity. At some point, they have to be set free. And
that's maybe that line, what do they eat? And she says whatever they want. Could have been her I'm tough line, or it could have just been like, these are still what they are.
But and actually, what was funny to me is I thought they weren't eating because they missed their brother.
That's what I thought too. I thought they were depressed that there's only two of them left.
And I was like, what do you fucking expect? They're sad.
But it didn't explain why they're not eating.
No, she said that they don't like the cold.
Oh, well, yeah, that's stupid. Yeah, it's much better for them to be in mourning or something. But I guess maybe the idea is here that they're going to be weak when the fight comes. Something like that. So, all right, and then real quick, we just get a scene with Beric Dondarrion and Tormund Giantsbane, and they're up in the north. They go to the Umber Castle, whatever it is, and they run into the Night's Watch, and we get a fairly horrifying horror movie type scene.
Yeah.
And I liked all that.
That was super eerie. I loved when that little boy just opened up his eyes. He was like, "Eee!"
No, it was creepy.
And the body parts, similar at the fight, the Fist of the First Men. And so here is this symbolism again, and what does it all mean? And then it gets lit on fire.
Right, I wonder if we're ever going to find out that spiral symbolism. Does it actually mean it? Is it something that matters, or is it just that's the way they roll?
Well, the Children of the Forest, there's implications with them with it. The show has introduced this several times.
Well, right, the Children of the Forest created the White Walkers, and they had that same symbolism of that spiral. Yeah, I just like that. I like that screaming sound of a kid is just scary.
A kid zombie.
And then it lasted a long time, longer than you would think.
That poor kid.
Yeah, that sucks.
That was another funny moment where he called out his name and he just pops up out of nowhere.
Who
this is when Jon sends him back to bring the rest of his people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when the little kid pops through. Yeah, that was a good place of humor. Just one thing about this show I just want to say that is really good is you get Dolorous Ed, who's the Night's Watch guy who runs into Tormund and Beric Dondarrion. And this is just somebody who probably the first few episodes you saw him and you're like, just a throwaway character, like a Red Showed in Star Trek. This is a guy that's just going to be gone in a few episodes or whatever.
Last Hearth, that's where the Umbers.
Oh, that's the name of their castle?
Yeah.
Anyways, I was talking to myself because you were on your phone, but anyways, what I'm saying is that you have these minor characters that grow over seasons, that it's just good. You know, a secondary character that becomes a main thing that you're kind of, suddenly you realize you have kind of an emotional attachment to after seeing them for 5 seasons or whatever. So that's just a strength of this series. And then finally, Jaime arrives, and
Yeah, he's not so golden anymore.
No, I assume he dyed his hair for disguise.
In the books, when Brienne is taking him back to King's Landing, he actually, like, shaves his head because he's got such obvious Lannister golden locks.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to comment on it in some sort of way, or if it's symbolism that he is detached from the Lannisters.
Well, right, because as we've mentioned in previous episodes, Tyrion's hair is getting darker
Yeah.
with each season, so maybe that's just...
But Cersei is still quite golden.
Right, yeah. So as you move away from the Lannister, your hair gets darker. But I mean, Jaime's is like black at this point. I assume it's got to be dyed. But anyways, he sees Bran, the kid he pushed out the window, who now is only a half-human super creature thing.
Well, and so here's what's funny, is like you see the horror on Jaime's face. And so I very much like to see the continuation of that scene and how that conversation goes. I do not expect Bran to be upset about it or anything, because he even says at some point, because I lost my legs, that's what brought me to become the Three-Eyed Raven. And so that set in motion that piece for Bran. And also he's kind of this weird person now where he's often very emotionless.
Yeah, I'm predicting that Bran won't care. There's going to be a lot of people mad at Jaime, but Bran won't be one of them. And
Brienne's there.
Right, Brienne will stand up for him. So nothing bad's going to happen to Jaime.
Tyrion will. Yeah.
But yeah, the ending, I suppose it was a good cliffhanger, but it felt so abrupt to me. Maybe just because it was under 60 minutes. I think it was like 54 minutes or something. And when it ends, you're just like, God damn it. So it was a little jarring, that ending. But I guess for ending on a cliffhanger was fine. All right, well, thank you guys for joining us, whoever did. And hopefully you'll join us for next week. And hopefully I'll be on iTunes by then. I will be posting on social media the names of the podcast and everything if we get on iTunes. Good night.